Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Chris Adams. I'm the online community manager for ModernAnalyst.com, the premier community for business analysts. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar titled Building Business Solutions, BAs Lead the Way to Business Excellence. Today's featured speaker is Gladys Lamb, co-founder and principal of Business Rule Solutions, LLC, and publisher of brcommunity.com. The webinar will last approximately 60 minutes, including the Q&A session at the end. So be sure to submit your questions in advance using the questions feature of the GoToWebinar software. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Gladys to get us started.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Modern Analyst and BBC for inviting me to this seminar. And first of all, a quick word about Building Business Capability Conference. For those of you who are not familiar with BBC, it is a conference focused in building business capability. The conference to be if you are analysts working in business process, business rules, business decisions, business strategy, and transformation. Now, continuing on that business theme, I am Gladys Lamb. I am co-founder and principal of Business Rules Solutions. Our focus in the last 20 years have been, no surprise, on the harvesting, specification, analysis, and management of business rules. We have published many books and articles in that topic. I am a co-founder of the book, co-author of the book, Building Business Solutions. Today, I'm going to explore with you what we mean by that and how we use business rules approach to build business solutions. So today, what are we going to be talking about? I will start by saying why business rule approach, and what we mean by building business solutions. What's a business rule? And the most common asked questions ever is business rule and requirements. What's the difference? And at the end, I'm going to show some quick deliverables, what we mean by business rules approach and what we deliver. So let's start with why we want to go to this approach. What are our issues today? Back in 2005 in CIO magazine, it's published that says 71% of software project fails because of poor requirements management. Okay, so that's back in 2005. Well, let's fast forward to today. You know what? Today's challenges are no different. What is that telling us? It is telling us that there's a big gap between what the business wants and what is being built. So how did that come about? How does that happen? You know, what are the challenges? You know, part of my job, the best part of my job is that I get to travel all over the world talking about business rules, looking at working with different organizations. And this kind of patterns happens everywhere. Yeah. On the business side, business people are often busy with doing their business things, which is making sales, processing orders, assessing loans, or adjudicating claims. You know, that's what their jobs are. And then we've got the IT side, and the IT people are excellent. They are wizards, and they, a lot of our clients refer to the IT departments, wizards. The developers are wizards. You know, they have a lot of technology background. They know how to build the systems. They know how to look at software packages and build databases, etc. And then comes this big gap in between. Now, how have we been addressing this gap? And there's no surprise to most of you here in this webinar to know that we installed the discipline of business analyst. You know, in the last 15 years or so, business analysts become really high profile in the space. So the idea is business analysts analysts bridge that gap between IT and business. Now, how have we been doing that? You know, business analysts in a lot of the organization I visited um, concentrate a lot on business requirements documents. And what are these documents? It has a lot of specifications of what the system should do. So, the system must provide ability to do this and that and that and that. And, I often ask, if you have 1,000 statements saying that the system should do this, should do that, how do you're done? And how do you know if you're complete? So, but a lot of BAs are concentrating in this area. But what we like to see is, asking that questions. Are we addressing the problem with the BA working on that? Projects are still not doing better. Why is that? Or it's not delivering business value. Why is that? Well, that could be because business are not run by projects. Project has a start and end. Business continues even when the project finishes. So we really need more focus on the business side. And what does that mean then? What we like to do, using the business rules approach, what we work with our clients on is having the business analysts focus more on the business, providing that business solutions. And what does that business solution include? We addressed, what we like to focus on are business strategy, to figure out how to win, how to get the competitive advantage. What are our strategy for the business? Business processes to determine how to be more efficient. Business rules to determine how to guide behavior. And decisions, operational business decisions to determine how to be smart. Business vocabulary or concept model to rethink core concepts, and policy monitors to determine how to measure success. Now, that's where we like to see business analysts being more instrumental at all, being more involved in. So currently, business analysts do still do a lot of work with IT on requirements document. And some of you out there probably are working with the business side to develop those business solutions. What we like to encourage business analysts to do is to focus more on the business solution side, and then using that business solution, communicating that to IT and translating that into business requirements. And not only that, we like to push even a little bit more, besides just business solution, is to have innovative business solutions. And, I'm going to talk a little bit more on what are these components mean. What do we mean by concentrating on the business solution? So, I say designing business solutions before developing requirements. That's going to be the theme on this hour. So what do I mean? What's a business versus a system solution? And I'll give a simple example and see if we can illustrate the point. So we have a rule here, a very simple rule. A customer must have an address. Very simple. All of us probably dealt with 1,000 of these types of rules. Now, how traditionally will we implement this rule? We have a screen out here and then the customer's name and address. That's very simple. And, with technology these days, you can map it in a map. You can actually drop a pin into the location of the address. That's neat. And again, with technology, you can have satellite view of where that address is. Or you can even have traffic patterns, drive through that address. And you know what? Your IT guys will love this because you give them a little bit and they can research on all kinds of technology that implement a very simple rule. But here's where I come in and say, stop a moment. Stop and think about the business. Ask the business question. Does the business really need an address? Before you go out and spend hundreds, thousands of dollars, thousands, and some of the, I'm sure your IT budgets or projects are in the millions. Before you go build all those fancy capabilities, step back and say, what is it the business really need? You know, one example to one part of our business is online training. Well, you know what? For online training, you know, for many years we've captured, you know, addresses from all of you and what have you. And, you know, for online training, I'm not visiting any of you. I don't need your addresses. So you need to step back and look at what makes sense for the business. Just because you've been doing it for many years, it doesn't mean that it's right. So for, you know, my business, for online training, or for some of your businesses out there, maybe addresses and the thing you need, if, you know, yeah, an email address, definitely, because I want to be able to communicate with you. Depending on age group, maybe a Facebook account, LinkedIn or Twitter account, how we can keep in touch. So again, addressing that business needs, stepping back, thinking about the business. That's what we mean by concentrate first, be a business person first, and an analyst, a business analyst second. So think about what your solution will do for the business before you think about the technology implementation. So I said a little bit about that. Let me now give you some example of what we mean by business rules. I go to a lot of organizations, and everywhere I go, everyone has different perspective what they think are rules. So I'm going to give a test, and normally I do this, you know, face-to-face with audiences, or there's some feedback, but because there's so many of you, there's just hundreds of you here, I won't be able to ask all your feedback, but so you can be honest to yourself. Here is a statement. So the question is this a business rule? And now if I am in front of a seminar room and so forth, a lot of times I get people shaking their head and they say, no, that's not a business rule. And, you know, I see some of you are replying to me on that. That's great. It's not a business rule. And most of you are saying no. So that's good. Yeah, it's more a requirement statement. You know, you provide a feature to do this. So it's more a requirement statement, what I say this statement is. So next statement. Is this a business rule? Customer provides account ID, systems displays accounts. You know, and again, I'm getting some of you replying saying no, no, and again, in a public seminar or in a seminar situation, I get a lot of people shaking their head and say, no, that's not a business rule. And I would agree with that. This is what I would call more a use case statement, you know, and a customer doing something, a system responding, a collaboration between actor and system. So it's more like a use case statement. Let's try one more. Is this a business rule? Now, you know, I'm seeing that the reply is coming slower. Usually when I display this on the screen, people think a little bit more. They have to look at this and think, okay, is this a rule? And I'm starting to get some yeses, and that's true too. And I'm in a seminar situation that people are starting to say, yeah, that's a rule. That's a business rule. Now, the key word here is this a business rule? Okay, this might be a implementation, a system if-then statement, and an implementation of a business rule. But in our definition, we would not say this is a business rule. So what is a business rule? What's the definition of a business rule? So we have a very simple definition. Really, a business rule is a criteria we use in business operation to guide your behavior or help you make a decision. And okay, so what does that mean? Let's take a look. So we take our 3 statements that we looked at earlier. This is one we looked at, and most of you have said no, that's not a business rule. And it's really, to me, it's a feature, right? Provides a feature. So it's a requirement statement saying, okay, go, build me something that handles electronic fund transfer. A business rule behind that might be, it might be this: every employee expense reimbursement must be processed through electronic fund transfer. Okay, so this is a rule that says that we have to process expenses through electronic fund transfer. Now, what you notice is when you start writing business rule and you harvest that rule out and externalize it, and that's the term we use, is that now you have a basis for business discussion. You look at this rule, then the kind of discussion that should go around the room is, why? Why do you want to process employee expenses through electronic fund transfer? And that answer could be, it's more cost effective, or an answer could be, oh, we can reimburse our employee faster that way. Well, then if that kind of answer come out, there could be other discussion that comes up that says, hey, maybe we can issue credit card for our company credit cards for our employee. That way, they don't have to be out of expense altogether. You see how the business rule allows you to talk at that business level, and you can discuss that, and then you can maybe get away with this whole requirement statement, because if you issue company credit card, you don't need this particular feature to support this rule. Now, remembering that, when you do this, the rule is really saying why. It gives you the justification. It gives you the business why of why you do something, why you have that requirement. Let's look at the next statement that we talked about, which is what I would call a use case statement. Customer do this, the system does this, actor and a system collaboration. So what would be a business rule then? A business rule could be, behind the scene, as simple as this: a customer must have a valid account. Therefore, that's why you have the use case of customer providing an account and system displaying the account. Now, when you have that rule, again, you can have some business discussion. Every customer have to have a valid account. What if a customer paid cash or debit card? Do they need a valid account? Again, that's the kind of discussion you want at the business level before you build any system. The next one's more interesting because some of you have said, yeah, that's a rule. Why isn't that a rule? Why can't this be a rule? And again, the key word here is this a business rule? Remember, when we say business rule, we want to communicate at a business level. And I don't think you will hear, business people, unless they're referring to their system, going to their customer and say, your overdrawn flag is set to yes. Right? So what is the business rule behind here? It could be this. There could be 2 rules behind here. An account must not be overdrawn. That's a really clear rule. You can't overdraw on your account. Well, what's how do you define whether an account is overdrawn? And there's a second rule that supports that. An account may be considered overdrawn only if cash withdrawal is greater than the current account balance. That makes sense, right? Because if you draw more money than what you have in your account, it's considered overdrawn. Now, those 2 are what we will call business rules, because you can communicate those 2 rules to your customer and say, that's how you get overdrawn on your account. And so, again, back to the business discussion behind this is, this actually happened. When we write these rules out on the board or however we capture it, the business discussion start, because somebody will raise their hand and they say to me, Gladys, that's not true. This rule is wrong. Because we have overdrawn protection. And so, customer can go over their account or what they have in their account. And so what's my reply? That's great. This is the kind of discussion we need. So now I can go into the next, discovery. What about overdrawn? What kind of limits do you have? What are the different tiers of overdrawn accounts, and what's acceptable and what's not, and harvest out those kind of rules. And you see, that allows you to talk very much in the business language or with the business people. And I get a lot of people coming up to me and say, Gladys, we can't get the business people into the room, or they don't have time for us. And you know what, a lot of times I'll tell you, they don't have time to look through rules like overdrawn flag is set to yes, because they can't relate. They look at that and that's your system thing. Let the system people worry about it. But if you harvest out rules like this that are true business rules, some of them trigger a lot of discussion, and the business people are there, because if it's wrong, they know it's wrong. Because if I implement a rule that disallow people to withdraw over their current balance and they have overdrawn protection, that's not good. That's going to have impact to your end customer. So if you can communicate your business rule in this way, you are able to get into that, developing that business solution with your business client. Okay, so our sense of business rule and what it's business and what's system. Rules and requirements. One of the most commonly asked questions. Everywhere I go, Gladys, what's the difference between rules and requirements? And I'll use a simple example and see if I can illustrate that for you. This is many years ago now. When my daughter was approaching driving age at 16, and she's 23 now, going into 24, as a mother, you're very concerned. I only have one child. You're very concerned about them driving. So I set a bunch of rules. What are my rules? Must not stay out past 10:30. So they are, there's of course grumbling. So I don't want her, as she drives, this is the whole thing, I don't want her driving late at night. I have another rule. You must not have a new driver drive you home, because she is of that age, 16. All her friends are also 16, and they are all new drivers. And so I want to know who it is that that's going to be driving her home. So I need to know that. So of course I get this, oh mom, next rule. I must know where you are at all times. Well, that, it's not going to be popular. Oh boy, big sign, not happy about that one either. Now here's another one, you can't go into a car with anyone I don't know. I get the response of, like, what? You don't know all my friends, I am 16 now. So, and then, must not go anywhere with strangers. And I get, of course, this, mom, I'm not stupid, So these are my rules. Okay, and I think all of you can see that these are rules. They are clearly rules. Now, then my daughter looked at this set of rules and thought about these set of rules for a little bit. And then she has a reply to me. She has a requirement. And can you guys guess what her requirement is? So she's approaching driving age, she's 16. These are my set of rules. Guess what? She has a requirement. Her requirement is, I need a car. So that was her requirement. So here's my question to you. That's my rule. She has a requirement. Question 1, do the rules exist even when you can't implement the requirement? So even if I don't give her a car, do those rules exist? Absolutely. She's not to stay out past 10:30. She's not to go into, a new driver's car without my permission. That rule still exists. Will implementing requirements mean all the rules will be complied to? No. Right? Not for sure. Just because you have the requirement, just because she has the car, it doesn't mean she will comply to all the rules. And will implementing the requirements enable easier compliance with the rules? Absolutely. Because now that she has a car, she doesn't have to go into a stranger's car. She doesn't have to go into other people driving her home. Absolutely, it will be easier to comply to the rule. And the next question is this the only feasible requirements to enable compliance to this set of rules? Of course not. She can take a bus. The rules are still the rules. The requirements is how you enforce or enable to implement the rules easier. So here it's some of the summary of thought on that. Business rules tells you whether you may or may not do something, or gives you the criteria, conditions to make a decision. Remember our definition of business rules is it helps you guide behavior and helps you make decisions. And now the business requirements are what you need to do to enable the implementation and compliance of business rules. I have a set of rules. Here are the requirements I need to help me implement these rules. Enforce it, implement it, make it work better. There could be many different alternative business requirements to implement a set of rules. And this is where, I see it everywhere, and I'm sure you all see it too. Technology change all the time, and you're just running mad trying to catch up on the next technology. What's the latest thing, neatest thing? At first you can just display an address. Now you have map. Now you have satellite image. All of that is really neat. But when what ground to what you need? What is the basic that you need to run your business is your set of rules. Without that technology, you still need those rules. Those rules are stable. It's just that you have better technology to implement it. So for those organization projects, and I work with a lot of executives in that manner, they're looking at the next technology all the time, and the technology are always the six-figure solutions and huge dollar amount. But a lot of times what's forgotten is, do they have the right set of rules to go into that technology? We're doing a lot of work on reverse engineering the rules out of application code, because that's where the knowledge is. We're doing a lot of work that takes regulation and what have you to transform those rules, interpret those regulation rules to a practicable set of rules so you can implement it into system. So get the rules right, and then your technology is going to work for you. So business rules are what they are. They shouldn't change. You shouldn't change your business rule, because that's your business competitive advantage. You shouldn't change those rules to fit the business requirement. And the other hand, though, if you have a rule change, and sometimes we do regulation change or agreement change, it could mean different requirements, additional requirements, or different implementation solutions. So That's the difference between rules and requirements. And I mentioned this earlier. Business rule gives you the basis to answer the question why. So, if my husband asks me, why do we have to buy our daughter a car? I can tell him it's because so that she can comply to these types of rules. So she doesn't have to go into a car with a stranger and what have you. So, and in the examples we gave earlier on the different statements that are not business rule, but once when we harvest out the business rule, that gives you again the business justification for the requirement, for the if-then statement, and for the use cases. Okay, business solutions to requirements. And what we like to see done is that there are business solutions. From the business solution, we represent the business solution in a business architecture. And from the business architecture, we get at the requirements, business requirement. So, what we like to see is that the business requirements are translated from a business architecture. And this way, we have complete traceability on always answering the question why. So the way I like to say it is the business architecture documents or models what the business needs to do, meaning it documents your business solution. It models your business solution. Business requirements, so it's what the business needs the system to do. So there's a difference. Even if you don't have systems, your business architecture should stay stable to allow you to run the business. And then, of course, automation makes a lot of things easier. And so now the business requirements allows you to do that. So what's in a business architecture and what is a business architecture? And it's just like what I said. It's really a structural, though the word is structure. There should be a structural way of representing that business solution. And that it can create the business value and achieving goals for the business. So what are the different components in a business architecture? Business strategy, in the book I showed earlier, Building Business Solutions, we talked a lot about business strategy. It really starts there. Talk about, we call it the battle plan for your business. Business concepts, this is your business vocabulary, your business concepts that sometimes you need to rethink business concepts to run a new capability, for example, or even existing ones to rethink how you've been handling accounts or orders or subscriptions and invoices. Those what we call business concepts. So there's a big component on that. And of course, there are business processes. That's about efficiency, working more efficiently. And of course, there's business rules and decisions. And there are other things like location, events, and role. All of that comprise the complete business architecture. And I don't have time to go into each of the components in detail, but they are all written up in the book, and I'll show you a few highlights. So from our methodology, we concentrate on all that area, the entire business architecture. But for this morning or this webinar, I'm going to highlight just a few things just to show you what we mean when we dig into this and look at building that business solution and documenting it in a business architecture. Business process, that's the easiest one to talk about because a lot of you I know, or a lot of people I go to, a lot of organizations I go to, they already are practicing business process management. They have discipline to do that. So, a business process is about getting work done. transforming some input into output. So there are these systematic steps that you can go through. And now, what a lot of people who conduct or who perform or does a lot of business process modeling or management don't realize are how business rules work within the business process. So as your business process goes along, there are sometimes these processes that have heavy decisions. One of those processes, a lot of times, like adjudicate claims. Is this claim eligible or not eligible? Eligible criteria, membership eligible or not. Mortgage, adjudicating a mortgage, is, what is this person acceptable for mortgage or not? Those kind of decision, yes, no, are you eligible, are you not eligible? Those are decision type tasks within a process. When you have those kind of tasks, you know what? You have a lot of rules in there. And so if a decision is made in a task, what we do is that we need to take that away and build a decision structure. And what a lot of people don't realize, without knowing that business rule and decision plays well with process, they start modeling that decision in your process flow, and then your process flow becomes very complex and hard to follow. So what we do is we realize there's a decision here. We build a decision structure to support that. And from that decision structure, there are decision rules. These are the rules that help you determine your eligibility criteria, or, your adjudication criteria, and so forth. And then there are also rules, what we call behavioral rules, that guide you through all of the process. For example, an order over $500 must be approved by a manager. Those are what we call behavioral rules. It guides you in every process step could have those rules. And then underneath all of this, the things that glue them all together that make things make sense is a structured set of business vocabulary, what I've been calling the business concepts. So those are the key components behind process, how process, decision, and rules and vocabulary work together. Just some quick examples. Our time is short. What does a decision structure look like? Well, we have a methodology called Q chart. It stands for questions chart. And it actually breaks down your decision into individual questions. And then from there, we can then develop the decision rules on each of the questions to come up with rules to answer those questions. And usually we model that through decision table. Then we have a convention called table speak to deal with that. And then there are these behavioral rules that we like to express in rule statements, and we have a convention called rule speak that, again, guides you through the business process. And that underlining it all, remember we have this structured business vocabulary, and we have convention called concept speak, which produce a concept model with clear definitions so that we can communicate at that business layer. So that's a very quick summary of some of the deliverables. We have some high-level templates that we use, and this is very high-level. When we describe business process steps, we always use verb and noun to describe, because it's an action. When the process is an action. And business rules, when we write business rule using rule speak, we use two rule words, one or the other, must or only. So if you have a statement, you put in must or only, all of a sudden it becomes a rule. It's a little bit more than that, but try that out. And the question statements are our structure, our decision structure. Requirements, we like to use the word, we like to start requirement statements with ability to. Ability to do something, ability to provide electronic fund transfer, ability to provide this. So that you are very clear what we are talking about. Okay, a summary of what I just said, and again, it's just some highlights on what we addressed in the business architecture, which documents the business solution. Business process, it's about efficiency in operations. Workflow, we use workflow, role, and activities to document business process. Business concept, it's about clarity in thinking. When we work with the concept model, we really push the limit on how to define those terms, how to name those terms, so we have common ground for communication. So we use terminology relationship. This is really allowing you to think outside the box. This is, building the concept model allows you to rethink some of your business key concepts that you've been working with. Business rules is about guidance and control, constraints and logics and decisions. And requirements, like I said before, we like to say use ability to is what the system needs to do, what automation, what technology is required. So that, and we talk a little bit of some of the deliverable, and this is a quick summary. Very quickly, to summarize it all, why do we want to use the business rule approach of think, decision, and rules, and wrapping it all up, coming back to building business capability, the name of the conference, and also, building what is needed for your business. Very quickly, and just stepping away from everything IT and just looking at the business end. When we want to build a new capability, what do we need? What do we need? We need people. Of course, human resources, now it's management of talents, right? It's been around for a long time. We know how to manage people. And technology, to have a new capability, we need technology. From the beginning of, invention of printing press to, IT to computer, we need technology. Information, back in the 70s, we had information engineering, data modeling. Now, big data is, obviously very in, and we need that for a new capability. Processes, process management has been around for the last, 15 years, and it's very popular. So yes, we absolutely need that when we build a business capability. So what's missing? What's missing to complete the pie here? After you sit through almost 45 minutes of the talk, there's no surprise for you that, yes, rules is missing from here. Well, I like to push it a little bit more. I like to call it's the intellect part. It's the intellectual part of the business capability. It's not here in this pie unless you put it in. And what does that involve? Going back, way back from the beginning of our slide, it involves strategy, business concept, business rules, decisions, and key performance indicators and measuring the success. We like to call those our operational IP, the intellectual property of your organization. That's where we in Business Rule Solution concentrate, and we encourage you to think about your solutions, your projects, to see where do you have your business rules? Where do you capture them? Where do you manage your intellectual property for your organization? That completes the 45 minutes of the webinar. And Chris tells me that we like to leave a little time on questions. And I see that there are some questions that's coming in already. So if you have questions, go ahead and use the question box in your control there and submit your questions, and I will try to answer them as best as I can. So uh, I'll leave that there, and we have a few minutes and for questions. And let me see. There's a question that come in that says, can I say business rule is like business policy, which the business follows? Yes, and the way we like to say is business policy is higher level. It may be more fussy. It's not as concrete as a rule. A rule, we like to say, is practicable. That means you can act on it. An order over $500 must be approved by a manager. That will be a rule because you know that if it's over $500, you have to be approved by a manager. A policy might be, a policy is we would have to have authorization for high dollar orders or high value orders. That might be a policy. High value orders must be approved. That's a policy, but you don't know what's considered high value, who should approve it. The rule gives you more concrete guidance. Okay, and the other question Julius asked, once you have stated business rules and discussed, do you go back and revise the rule? Absolutely. We work those rules many times. It transforms, and like I said, when we get the rules in these rule statements, a lot of times the business themselves have to rethink their business a little bit. So we rewrite the rule and represent it to the business, and they rethink. We've actually done work where with some government agency that all of a sudden, one of the participants who's pretty high up in the organization said, "Stop a minute! I need to get this rule passed in Congress, and I know they have a meeting, this Thursday. So stop, let me phone and see if I can get that on the agenda." So so he goes off and and get it into the Congress discussion, so that we have to wait for respond to that and see if the rule gets passed, and then we can rewrite the rule. So yes, there are lots of revision to it. So don't be afraid. Actually, the way I say business rule is, with business rule projects, is that when the project is done, is when the life of business rule starts. Because the way we want to architect business rule projects is that when we externalize the rules, we're managing the rules, we're writing these rules in business context, and the business people can manage it, is that now those rules can change. And this is where the life of the business rule starts, so that you can have agility in your business. You can change the rules quickly. You know the impact of the change. First of all, you know what your rule is, and then you know the impact of the change, and then you can change it. And hopefully with the right traceability, you can see where the rules are implemented, and you're able to change that. And another system could comply to business rule. Is that the requirement? Solution must comply to all business rules, and that's a question. Yes. If your system are not complying, is not implementing your business rule, then you should be really concerned. Because what is it implementing? Because the business rules are should be what's driving your business. So if your system is not implementing those rules, then what's driving your business? And but I have seen, where organizations don't really know what their rules are. I have clients that basically come to me and ask me, "Gladys, can you tell me what my rules are? Go dig and find out and let me know." And because why? And I tell you the big driver on business rule, or at least I see when people come to me, number one, a lot of baby boomers are retiring. So a lot of these rules that are implemented in systems now, the knowledge, it's going out the door because they're retiring and we don't know what those rules are. So I've got, calls and executives say, Gladys, we are really at risk. That organization is at risk, not knowing what those rules are. Another one that another big driver is compliance, and in our approach, we encourage straight traceability from regulation all the way to the interpretation of that rule and into the implementation of the rule. So you know where it's implemented and how it's interpreted. So if there are compliance issues, that you can answer them. So that's a big one as well. And so when you ask if the system should the system be complying to the business rule or implementing the business rule, the answer is absolutely yes. Is there any artifact to capture entire business rules of the system during requirements gathering, which can make requirements capturing easily? And that's the whole point of the presentation. You really need the rules before requirements. And so your question is it in the requirement gathering sessions? I understand how projects are defined. You're given a certain dollar and here's your project is beginning to end and you just have to, you're given an IT project. And then a lot of times people come to me and say, I'm supposed to develop requirements document, a business requirement document. I don't have time to do the business architecture and the rule side of things. Well, I'm a little smarter than that. I'll just say, okay, you have to do the business requirements document, but you still need the business rules. So if the business rules are in your business requirements document, I don't mind. You just have to do the work. So you still have to go up front and get at the business rules, and then it will make your requirements easier. Just like I said before, once when I have to rule, then I can make the requirement based on the rules, and there are many different ways to write that requirement, and then you can refer back to the rules. I would suggest you step back, get at the rules, and then develop the requirements. And there's a question about comparing concept model with the entity relationship diagram. The other co-founder in our organization, Ron Ross, some of you might have heard of him. He's actually written many books on business rules. He's known as the father of business rules. He wrote the first book on business rules. And he, part of all of the books you will see will have a discussion on concept model. And what we want to concentrate on, the concept model, is about business concepts. Now, why I mention Ron is Ron, prior to researching on business rules, he did a lot of work on data. And he actually wrote books on entity relationship model as well. So if you ask him, he will say the ER model, entity relationship, is about data. Data is, it's not the real business concept out there that the business people are working with. So in the concept model, we really want to restrict to business terminology. I think that's the big difference. What we like to see is that the entity relationship model is based on the concept model. That's what we like to see happen. Now, sometimes in real life is that you might already have your database defined, and we might, somehow trace our concept model, the business term, to your data elements. So that there could be traceability there. Do you manage business rules in a separate file from business requirements? How do you link the two for traceability? Yes, I do manage business rules in a separate place, separate file, because why? The simple answer is this. Once when your project is done, your business requirements should be done. You should be able to take. I've done this requirement. I've done this requirement. Yeah, I'm done. But you know what? Your business rules are not done. Your business rule are what's you use to operate your business with. So you have to manage that and continuously looking at it, because your business people are going to continuously want to revise that rule to make your business smarter all the time. So I do manage them differently. And how do I provide traceability? There should be traceability, and what I like to do is from my set of business rule, I trace to where the requirement is, and basically if you use case and what have you, to document where these rules will be used in the use case. And you know what? When I do the use case document, I don't need to repeat all the rules in that use case document anymore. I should be able to refer to a packet of rules or group of rules that in my rule management system or however I manage a rule, and say, these are the set of rules that you should use for this requirement. So, I do that traceability. Can something like business rule be applied to public sector organization or non-business organization and non-profit? Absolutely. So yeah, we call it business rules, but one of our client is a Center of Disease Control. And how do we apply that? I'll tell you, with their example, it's really neat. There are regulations that comes out from health authorities. That really came from doctors, nurses, and health professionals. That's very technical as in, health technical. And now what happens is when those documentation goes into the, all the different states, all the different jurisdictions, each one of them has to interpret those and then implement their systems based on that. So where CDC came in is say, look, instead of all of the 50 some odd jurisdictions doing the interpretation on their own and doing the specification on their own, and then it becomes very highly inconsistent through all of the jurisdictions. CDC is saying, okay, we are going to interpret those regulation ones to operational business rules, and then from there we distribute those business rules to the 50 some odd states, and then of 50 some odd jurisdictions. They can use that set of business rules for implementation. And so we do a lot of work in the government sector on the business rule, and think of the regulations are rules. And I think one of the senior manager in CDC says to me, that says, Gladys, that's all we do is to manage rules in the CDC when you think about it. I see that there are still a lot of good questions here. I don't think I have time to go over all of them, but thank you for all that good questions. And, you know, come see me, and I only have a couple of minutes left here. Come see me at the BBC. I will be there. Ron will be there. There are a lot of people talking about rules, process, and so forth. So if you get the opportunity, please come see us. It's this year is October 31st to November 4th. And if you can't participate on that, we do have some online training and the rest of the year, the two scheduled for the rest of the year. And feel free to call me or email me. I said earlier, I think one of the slides said, feel free to book 15 minutes with me to talk about your rule challenges, and I'll be happy to share whatever experience I have. On that note, I will hand it back to you, Chris.
Okay. Thank you, Gladys. That was a great presentation and a lot of great questions from the audience today. Thank you all for attending today's Modern Analyst webinar. I'd like to remind you that today's webinar, along with the slides, will be archived at ModernAnalyst.com within a few days. This concludes today's event. Have a great day.